table creation statement where the constraints are defined, created at the table level. We do this by including the the constraint creation or the constraint definition at the end of the column list. At the end of the column list. So, our create table statement, we're going to start defining our columns here by providing column names and data types and so on. Now here's a not null. Remember, the not null has to be at the column level. But when we get down here, this is our last column name. Notice the comma. Then we start creating some constraints. This particular constraint, we're going to name it equip ID _PK. Again, I mentioned in class good naming convention for constraints. The name of the table, the name of the field, and that 2-character identifier to say what type of key it is, or what type of constraint it is. Okay. So it's going to be, this constraint is going to be on the equip ID field. It's a primary key constraint. But because we're doing this creation at the table level, we have to identify which field this key pertains to. Now I know that in the past many of my students have asked why. We said what field right here. No, this is the name of the constraint for us humans to be able to identify what is this constraint. The database management system doesn't understand that because we named it equip ID that it pertains to the equip ID field. So this part right here identifies which field within this table does this constraint pertain. Okay. Now, here's the second one. The constraint, it's a foreign key constraint. We identify which field in this table, department ID, and then it references, that keyword references says what table does this key reference. It references the depth table or the department table, and which field in the department table does this key or this constraint reference. And down here we have a check constraint. Again, a check constraint usually provides a list of available values to use in this field. And I said usually, not always, but it's not uncommon. We saw an example of a check constraint that used a mathematical expression. This particular check constraint says that in the rating column or the rating field, you can only use the values A, B, or C. So the rating of this piece of equipment has to be either A, B, or C. That's another example of a check constraint. Okay. Here's an example on page 120 of putting multiple constraints on a single column. A column may be included in multiple constraints, and in this example, the order number column is included in a primary key and a foreign key constraint. Why? Because in the order items table we have what's known as a composite primary key. Two fields combine to make up the primary key, the order number field and the item number field. And again, I'm going to apologize if you're confused. When I say field, it's the same thing as column. When I say column, it's the same thing as field. So, we create a foreign key constraint, and I will move the page number so that you can read this if you want, but note that it is on page 120. So, a foreign key constraint is created for the order number field, and but the order number is also used in the primary key field. Okay, the primary key field includes both the order number and the item number.